Hello everybody and welcome back to Vehicles of War Thunder. In this episode we're going to be covering another Italian tank with the L640. It was brought to my attention a while back, while browsing the War Thunder subreddit, that Gaijin had the brilliant idea, for some reason, to move stuff around in the Italian deck tree, including moving the M1340 1 and 3 to 1.7 and 2.0 respectively, and making the L640 one of the Italian reserve tanks. So I thought let's go and check out and see if that made any improvement to the vehicle. To save those of you that are only interested in the review section of the video, the answer to that, in my opinion, is no. The vehicle is still hot garbage. And by the nature of matchmaking, it's probably even worse now than when it was added way back in 1.85, back in December of 2018. When it comes time to When we get to the reviews section, I'll go into a bit more detail as to why I came to that conclusion, or how I came to that conclusion. But first, let's go ahead and jump into the design history. During the First World War, the Italians fought the Austro-Hungarian Empire on their northeastern border, which is largely mountainous terrain. As a result of this combat, the Italians figured their next European war would likely see a similar style of combat, and thus in the 1920s and 30s, the Regia Esercito, probably mispronounced that, alongside Ansaldo and Fabbrica Italiana Automobile de Torino, aka Fiat, would request or design armored vehicles that were suitable for mountain combat. This would result in the L3 series of 3-ton light tanks, the L640, and the M1139. As a result of this philosophy, vehicles would have to meet certain requirements, such as being able to navigate the narrow mountain roads and be light enough to pass the wooden bridges that were characteristic of the Alps. As a result of these requirements, and a belief that fighting in the mountains meant you couldn't possibly be outflanked, many of these vehicles would be using a casemate design to save weight. During the Italian invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, the High Command of the Italian Royal Army was not impressed with the L3 series of light tanks and would request that a new tank be designed and equipped with a turret and armed with a cannon. Fiat and Ansaldo would begin a new joint project to meet this request and would start by using the chassis of the L335, the latest of the L3 series of light tanks. Come November 1935, they would unveil the Carro d'Assalto Modello 1936, using the same chassis and engine as the L335, but with a new torsion bar suspension system and a one-man turret armed with a 37mm gun. The new suspension system impressed the Italian generals during testing, but the vehicle's center of gravity when off-road or firing was considered problematic, and so further development would be required. In April 1936, the Carro Cannone Modello 1936 would be unveiled. It had a 37mm gun on the left side of the superstructure, which had limited traverse, obviously, and a rotating turret armed with a few machine guns. This, however, was not what the army had requested, and so the design would be rejected. As a result of this failure, Fiat and Ansaldo would begin a new project which, according to engineer Vittorio Valletta, was born due to a request by an unspecified foreign nation. Development on this new tank would begin in late 1937 and would be designated as the M6, M for Medio or medium, though later this would be changed to L6, L for Leggero or light, after the weight limit for medium tanks was raised from 5 tons to 8 tons. Come December 1938, the Italian Royal Army would issue a request for a new medium tank to be called the M7 with a weight of 7 tons, a max speed of 35 kilometers an hour, and an operational range of about 12 hours, and an armament of a 20mm automatic cannon with either a coaxial machine gun or a couple of machine guns and a 360-degree traversable turret. On October 26, 1939, the design would be presented to the Italian Army General Staff, who were not impressed. However, one general, Cosmo Manera, was interested in it and would propose accepting it into service on the condition that the armament be changed to a 20mm autocannon. In his eyes, this would not only increase the vehicle's anti-armor performance, but also allow it to engage aircraft. Shortly afterward, a new prototype with two different armament combinations would be presented. The first would be armed with a Canone 37/26 with an 8mm coaxial machine gun, while the second would be equipped with the Canon Mitragliera, or something to that effect. I'm definitely mispronouncing this. Breda 20/65 1935 automatic cannon, also accompanied by an 8mm machine gun. Despite the wishes of General Manera, the second configuration lacked the gun elevation to engage air targets, not to mention that the commander in the turret had poor visibility and would be unlikely to spot a rapidly approaching air target anyway. The prototype armed with the 20mm autocannon would be tested between 1939 and 1940, and during one of these tests would fall over during a rough terrain test and catch fire due to the high center of gravity caused by the poor arrangement of the fuel tanks in the engine compartment. The prototype would be recovered and the necessary modifications made, and in April 1940 it would be accepted into service as the Carro Armato L6/40. The final tank would weigh in at 6.8 tons, when battle ready, have 2 crew, be powered by a Fiat SPA 180 4-cylinder engine developing 70 horsepower. It would have a road speed of 42 kilometers an hour and a road range of 200 kilometers. Its armament would consist of a single Breda 35 20mm automatic cannon with 395 rounds, and a Breda Model 38 8mm machine gun with 1,560 rounds. It would be protected by between 6 and 40 millimeters of armor, and a total of 283 would be produced. A few variants of this tank exist, including the L640 Centro Radio, which had a radio transceiver mounted on the left of the fighting compartment, the Semoventre L40 Duff 47/32, and was built between 1942 and 1944. It used the chassis of the L640 and was equipped with a 47mm gun to provide direct fire support during infantry assaults. A transport variant to carry ammo for the Semovente M41M 90/53 would be developed and could carry 2 more crew and 26 more rounds. It would often be towing an armored trailer carrying an additional 40 rounds for a total of 66 rounds. The final variant is effectively an Italian copy of the British Bren carrier. However, it didn't really serve much of a purpose, being unable to transport more than the 2 crew and a few soldiers sitting on the hull, and it wasn't really capable of towing anything beyond the 47mm Canona da Model 4732 Modello 1939. It did come equipped with a Mitragliera Breda Model 1931 13.2mm heavy machine gun in a front spherical support, and a Breda Modello 1938 that could be mounted in one of 2 anti-aircraft mounts, one in the front and one in the rear. 3 examples of the L640 still exist, one at the Armored Vehicle Museum in Kubinka, one at the Military Museum of the Albanese Army, and the final one is, and hopefully I'm getting this right because my sources refer to this location somewhat differently, is placed as a Gate Guardian at the Commando NATO Rapid Deployable Corps headquarters at Caserma Mara in Sobiate Olona near Varese, and I definitely butchered basically everything in that last sentence. Now for how the L640 performed in real-life service. While the design was effective as a scout tank when deployed in cavalry and reconnaissance units, it was also pushed into service with regular units due to shortages of medium tanks in the Italian army by 1941. It would see its first combat in the Balkans and would also form a large part of the Italian armor that was deployed during Operation Barbarossa. Near the end of Operation Uranus in 1943, what Italian L640s were still in service on the Eastern Front would retreat across the Ukrainian steppes, and in North Africa, the L640 would take part in a number of operations through the summer and fall of 1942. After the Italians signed their armistice in 1943, the Germans would take over all existing vehicles and produce a handful more. It would see service with both the Wehrmacht and the forces of the German puppet state in Italy of the Italian Social Republic. After the war, the Italian National Police would continue to use the L640 until 1952. A little bit on the one variant of this tank that is available in-game, the Simovente 4732. By the time it reached the field in 1942, it was largely outdated and unable to effectively deal with the Allied medium tanks it would encounter, such as the T-34 on the Eastern Front and the Sherman in Sicily and North Africa. Just like with the L640, the Germans would take over and use some of these tanks and designate it as the Stug L6 MIT 4732 630I. Now for how the L640 actually performs in War Thunder. As mentioned before, I think the L640 is crap and basically serves no real purpose in game. It suffers from a few issues, ranging from only having a crew of 2, making you very easy to kill, and ammo that is only really just adequate for a regular full up tier. For the regular full up tiers that you will experience while playing it, due to there not really being all that many people playing at the 1.0 BR range. So a lot of your matches are going to be up tiers to either 1.7 or 2.0. And with these up tiers, you have to really rely on the Panzergranate 40 round that you unlock, which, while it gives you the penetration to deal with most enemies, it doesn't really do a ton of damage afterwards, and you have a fairly small belt. So it's not like you can just sort of spray into an enemy and kill them in a single, clip, magazine, whatever it would be in this exact scenario. I'm not 100% certain. But either way, you only have the one, I think it's something like a 6 or 8 round belt, basically. And then you got to do a reload. It's not a long reload, but that's still plenty of time if you don't take out the turret crew for somebody to react and shoot back at you while you're still in the process of potentially reloading, especially if you don't have a fully, upgraded crew, which you're definitely not going to have for your new Italian player. As for the 4732 L40, as it is labeled in-game, that is a much better vehicle in my opinion. It has a round that is capable of penetrating most, if not everything, you should reasonably face without too much trouble, including from the front. And that same round can kill a lot of the stuff that you will encounter in a single shot. For an admittedly somewhat small 47mm round, it has a decent amount of explosive filler inside of it. Especially when you hit a target, center mass, it will have issues, admittedly. It will certainly have issues if a vehicle is large with spaced out crew, or, as I think is somewhat more likely, you're just fighting something that has a shit ton of crew, like an SMK or a LVT-40, and the LVT-40 is sort of a mix of both, having spaced out crew as well as a ton of crew. My only real complaint with the 4732 L40 is that it has an absolutely garbage suspension system that is not really adequate for the vehicle. As a result, anytime you come to a stop, especially if you were at any sort of real speed, or even after you fire the tank, or you fire the gun, the tank will shake quite a bit, and you have a fairly short reload, but the shaking will generally last longer than your reload, in my experience. And so it can be very hard to actually, fire multiple shots at a target very quickly. You end up needing to spend quite a bit of time waiting for the suspension to to stop shaking so much. Another downside, it's not really a complaint with the vehicle because there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's if you want the game to be somewhat realistic, this is just the downside of a vehicle like this. It is an open top. The 4732 L40 is an open top tank destroyer at a 1.3 battle rating. It's a little bit higher than the obviously the main vehicle that it's based off of. But as a result of being open top, as a result of being open top, you can be fairly easily killed by basically anything you're gonna fight, so long as they have a machine gun. And especially when you add in planes, artillery, and bombs, or even, you know, the odd high explosives, which admittedly isn't all that common. There's also, you know, a bit of a weird, funky thing, in my opinion, where your commander, I think is what their title is, if I recall correctly, even though they don't look like they stick above the actual, you know, chassis, they actually are. They can be machine gunned. And the rest of the crew can also be fairly easily machine gunned, even by tanks that probably you wouldn't think could machine gun you because they're not really taller than you. I got killed at one point by an M22 Locust. Machine gunned me because my round bounced off of his front plate. Even though I think it should have penned, but whatever. But yeah, he was somehow able to machine gun me. I don't know how, because I don't think my guys should have been in the line of, you know, the line of fire of his machine gun, but they were. And so that's a bit of an annoying thing with this vehicle. You're gonna have to try to play in like wooded and covered areas where you're unlikely to get strafed by planes, or at least it's less likely for a plane to come after you because they can't see you. And with the lack of communication that generally exists in War Thunder, you're probably able to, you know, act with a reasonable degree of impunity. Now, if it was up to me personally, I would remove the L640. I don't think it has any redeeming qualities. It is an absolute garbage reserve tier tank, in my opinion. Literally every other reserve tier tank, in my opinion, is better than it. Even the relatively crappy Japanese tanks, because I don't think Japan has good vehicles, at least early on. They might get better much further on, but their early vehicles, oh my god, are they crap, in my opinion. So yeah, like I said, personally, I would remove the L640. I think it's crap. I would move the M13, right? Yeah, the M1340s back down to where they were before this change, because I think that they worked well there. Moving them up, I don't think was really a great idea. Their rounds, I don't think, are quite adequate, especially because, again, full up tiers are going to be very common for them at that 1.7 and 2.0 BR. They're going to get a lot of up tiers. It's one of those weird things. If you play anything lower than them, you'll get a lot of up tiers to that BR, but if you play at that BR, you don't get a lot of down tiers. You get a lot of up tiers. Basically, no matter what, you're almost constantly being up tiered in War Thunder, in my experience, especially when you're playing at a lower BR. I would, however, keep the 4732 L40 because it actually seems like it has a place, and it's, you know, it's usable. And it's not some weird niche usable. It is legitimately usable. Now, I'm not sure what I'll cover next time. I'm thinking either a Japanese, maybe an Italian vehicle, or a French tank. Don't know. We'll figure it out. That's going to be it for this video. I'll see you all next time. If you want to stay up to date with the channel, I would highly recommend you join the Discord server. You can find a link to that down below in the description. If you found yourself enjoying this video or any other video on the channel and you want to support the channel financially, there are two major ways to do that, either via Streamlabs or Patreon. Take your pick. If you go the Patreon route, that is intended obviously for monthly support, and it comes with some goodies such as early access to videos. if you go the Streamlabs route, while Streamlabs does have an option for doing monthly support, you don't get any goodies if you go that route. I do want to note. You get nothing out of it beyond a warm, fuzzy feeling somewhere in your body. Wherever it is you get your warm, fuzzy feelings when you give money to people. Particularly money to people for content you enjoy, I'm assuming. And that's basically all you get for it. You don't get any actual reward from me if you choose to support via Streamlabs. It's entirely up to you how you want to support the channel if you choose to do so. I believe the math works out that Streamlabs is generally better for smaller number of donations, particularly when they're one-offs. But I believe the math works out that Patreon ends up being better in the long run if there's a bunch of people that choose to support the channel on a regular basis. But yeah, so I'll see you all next time. Until then, a goodbye and a farewell.